All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So today we're going to be talking about the election of 1824, and we're going to end it with the Trail of Tears. Now, some of you guys may have already heard about the Trail of Tears. You've learned something in the past about it, which is awesome. But we're going to talk a little bit more about it and what happened. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with this lesson. Okay. So we're going to be looking at the objectives, and the first one is analyze how the election of 1824 was stolen, because one of the candidates in that election said that the election was actually stolen from him, and we're going to look at that to see if it really was, more or less. We're going to examine whether the president's cabinet positions should be given out or should they be earned. We're going to look at that, okay? And we're going to create an argument on whether the Cherokee Rose story is true or not. So there's a story I'm going to be telling you about a particular flower called the Cherokee Rose, and you're going to basically decide whether you believe that's true or not. Okay. Okay. So here is your warm-up picture. So be sure you answer the question on the Google Classroom and in the Google Doc. Um, so analyze the picture. What do you see? So I don't want to give it away, but that thing that the guy's standing on, that's called a balance beam. Okay. So what does that tell you? Okay. And then remember what we've been talking about in class, and I've mentioned it several times, dealing with, the slavery. You remember about the states. So that should really help you out to understand this picture. Okay, so continue writing if you're not done, but if you are done, we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right, so here's the thing. The election of 1824, it's ran by Andrew Jackson, John Quincy Adams, the son of John Adams, the second president. This is his son running. Then we got William Crawford and Henry Clay. Now the thing is, we have the Electoral College, right? And a majority is needed to win to become president. Problem was in the 1824 election, there wasn't a majority. You know, it was really between two guys, which was Andrew Jackson and Quincy Adams. Now, the thing is, when this happens, it usually goes to the House of Representatives, and the House of Representatives then vote um, as to who wins the election. Now, the thing is, the um, it's usually between the first, second, and third place people, which would be Jackson, Adams, and Crawford. The thing was, um, Henry Clay was kicked out, and Henry Clay had some umph with him, meaning that some people in the House of Representatives liked him, they got along well with him, they supported him, and as long as you can see, between Quincy Adams and Henry Clay, they both supported tariffs, and spending on roads and canals and businesses, things like that. Whereas someone like Andrew Jackson was more like, no, we should not spend that on that. We should, reduce, the spending and stuff like that. Um, and so you can see there's more of a connection between Adams and Clay. So what happens is the vote comes in the House of Representatives and they vote for John Adams. So Adams becomes president. Now, Jackson is just livid. He is so upset. And his supporters are called Jacksonians. They are upset. The thing is, when John Adams becomes president, he makes Henry Clay his Secretary of State. Now, besides the president and the vice president, the next person in power is the Secretary of State. And guess who was just appointed that? So Andrew Jackson and his people are shouting from the rooftops, This is a fix. It's corrupt. They cheated. They made a bargain. They made a secret bargain in the back rooms and things like that. If Clay gave his votes to Adams, then Adams would then, make Clay the Secretary of State. So the Jacksonian people are so upset and they're crying foul, okay, for this 1824 election. Okay. Now remember I told you guys, the people who were anti-federalist, they changed their names to Democratic Republicans. Those people became now known as Jacksonians. Okay. So now they're changing their name again a little bit to Jacksonians. So here's your first question. Based off what you've learned so far, do you believe there was actually a bargain made between Adams and Clay? Was it stolen, like Andrew Jackson said? So go ahead, write down what you think, okay? So if you're watching this, pause the video, but we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right, so here's the thing. With after the 1824 election, the population just blew up, right? Because now the expansion west, the Louisiana Purchase is completed, things like that. More places are becoming states. And like I said, the population grew, and that means the voting grew. It grew from 355,000 voters, and then in 4 years, it basically almost quadruples, basically almost grows 4 times as much. It grows to 1.13 million people. The thing is, a lot of those people are those Jacksonians that we talked about. The people who think that Jackson is like the average man, the fighter of the common man, and things like that. So Jackson wins hands down quite easily. But the thing is, this new system comes up in politics called the spoil system. All right. Basically, what happens is like this: if the president then says, if they get elected, they have a lot of positions to fill: Secretary of State, Treasury, Agriculture, things like that. Um, and then there's other little departments. Those people who really helped out the president, Jackson made sure that they got jobs in those positions. Now, the thing is, some of those people did not really belong there. What I mean by that is that these people were not politicians. They weren't, like Secretary of Agriculture. The person in charge of that really wasn't into farming and things like that. They were more like a mathematician, or they were a businessman that just helped out the president, because they believed in him, and they were in charge of that department. So they don't know really anything about agriculture besides how to run it like a business. Okay. Now there's a new thing called the caucus system, and that's how the presidents are elected. Now, now they're chosen through a natural nomination convention. Basically, Republicans get together and they decide who they want to run as president. The Democrats do the same thing. They get together and decide who they want to run for president. Okay. Now, like I told you guys earlier, Adams had this thought about tariffing, putting taxes on goods from like England. Now, thing is, that helps out the United States businesses because that's extra tax on a foreign good. So the price is going to be higher for something coming from England. Let's say teapots. Okay, so instead of costing $100, that teapot from England is going to cost $125. Now, the United States teapot may cost $110, right? So which one would you rather have? The one that's $110 or one of the ones that's $125? Okay, more likely you're going to go with the 110 because it's cheaper. Same type of thing, basically. Going to do the same job, but it's a little bit cheaper. Now, if it was $100 and $110, chances are you go with the $100 one. And that's what tariffs do. It takes the foreign good stuff and puts it at a higher price than the American-made thing because they want you to buy America stuff. Because then that means the money is going to stay here in America. Okay. Now, because of this extra tax, South Carolina threatens to secede, which that means is they're threatening to separate from the United States. Is that legal? Yes. Yes. There is nothing by law that says that we are united together, that we have to be together. We are called the United States, not the United by Law states. So if a state wants to leave from the United States, they can. They have that right. Okay. And that's what South Carolina basically says. They want to separate because of these tariffs. So here's the thing. Um, the Vice President John C. Calhoun, which is that guy you see right here to the side, they come up with this thing called a nullification. Basically, what happens is that the states like South Carolina is upset about these tariffs, and they're like, again, like, we can go away from it. We don't have to accept what the government says, what the nation says, because of states' rights, which is part of the 10th Amendment. So they basically say the states make up the nation, and they can decide whether a law is good or bad, whether they accept it or not. Okay. Now, the thing is, at this time, nobody really challenged the laws of the land. They kind of accepted it. They kind of rolled with it, even if they didn't like it. But South Carolina is the first one to put their feet down and say, no, no, this is wrong. We, the states, should have the right to say yes or no to things. And some of them are upset because, excuse me, that's what Jackson basically believes too. And they're like, well, you're part of the government now. You're ahead of it. Why are you doing this? So they're getting kind of upset. Okay. Now the thing is, they settled the issue of nullification, basically when states can separate and things like that, with the compromise of the tariffs. Okay, with that, Henry Clay is the one who really helped out with that. You should remember Henry Clay because we just talked about him earlier in this video. But it also brought up an issue between two senator guys, Robert Hayes and Daniel Webster. Okay, Hayes is from South Carolina, Webster's from Massachusetts. Okay, and they're basically saying whether us being as a nation is a volunteer thing or are we really truly one United States? Can a state leave just because they don't like something? Now, Hayes, the guy from South Carolina, says we should have freedom first and then the union are being together second. So freedom should be first and then patriotism second, And Webster is like, no, 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 no. Freedom and basically unity should be together forever, one and inseparable. So like he's saying, you can't separate saying, oh, we should have liberty and then this. He's saying no, they go hand in hand. It's like peanut butter and jelly. No, you just put them together, and it's so much better that way. You know, it's like pizza and pepperoni, just perfect together. You know, so that's what Webster's saying, but Union Hayes is like no, freedom comes first, and then comes our unification, our patriotism with one another. So here's your second question. Who do you agree with? Do you agree with Hayes or Webster? Now remember, Hayes is the one who says your freedom come first and then the unity, then the unity with the rest of the country. But your freedom should always come first. Webster goes, no, they're together. Your freedom and your patriotism go together because once you lose one, you're going to lose the other, and vice versa. So go ahead and write down your response, who you truly believe. Think really to yourself, what should come first, your freedom and then your unity, your patriotism to your country, or should they both be together? Okay. And then tell me why. Remember, the why is the key to these questions. Why do you believe this? Okay, so go ahead, write your response. Be sure to pause the video because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. So here's the thing. President Jackson is known for one of the biggest faults in U.S. history, the Indian Removal Act. This was an incident where um, thousands and thousands of Native Americans were forced off their lands. And he went on to say basically it's to ensure their survival, you know, when in reality it's total real BS. Um, and the thing is, there was Native Americans who fought back, not only through, with arms and guns and things like that, but legally as well. There's two major court cases that went talking about the territorial rights, and they're like, we have treaties, we have agreements saying this is our land, this is our reservation, this is our area. So you got Cherokee Nation versus Georgia, and you have Worcester versus Georgia. And the thing is, the Supreme Court heard these cases and said, okay, yeah, they're right. They have this right. This is their land. We made an agreement. The United States should honor it. Now, the Chief Justice in charge, his last name was Marshall, right? And Jackson was told, hey, this was Marshall's ruling. What do you say? He said this exact words: Marshall has made his opinion. Let him enforce it. In other words, yeah, he can talk all he wants, but let's see him stop me. You said that their land's there? I say it's not. Stop me. You're not going to. And he continued anyway. So a lot of Native Americans were kicked out of their homeland. As you can see, you got the several ways they did it. You had the northern route, which is the white route. You had the water route, which was the way the river was, and that took some time. You had the red route right there, and then you had the bell, the attachment. These are the names of the guys who, well, Benj and Bell. These were the main guys who were in charge of making sure the Native Americans went from Georgia and Alabama all the way to Oklahoma, which is our current day Oklahoma. The thing is, it started with Jackson and it ended with Van Buren. When Van Buren became president, he still allowed it to continue. 2,000 Cherokees died during the roundup. Another 2,000 or so died on the trail from starvation, disease, exposure. And then there's talk about like how Andrew Jackson made sure that the blankets and stuff like that had smallpox in it. There's a lot of evidence to support that he actually did. Now, did he personally put him on there? No, but was it in a sense that he know about it? Yeah, there's pretty good evidence that supports that he knew about it at the very least, if he didn't order it. Okay. So here's a little picture to help you understand about the Trail of Tears. Now, as you can see on the outside of this trail, there's a couple of soldiers with guns. There's another one up there. You can see them kind of escorting the Native Americans to Oklahoma. Now, this is a legend I heard about some years ago, and it's absolutely sad, but it's also pretty interesting. So I would like to share this with you guys. So this picture right here, that's a Cherokee Rose. Now, like I said, during this time, the Indian Removal Act, the Native Americans, specifically Cherokees, were forced off their land, and a lot of the people who were on the trail were older people. They were sick people, and then there was children. Okay, the people who really had a lot of strength were the women. Okay, because again, a lot of men, they fought against the the soldiers and they try to fight to keep their people at home. And some of them died, some of them, tried to move on to strike in another place, things like that. But the women were really the strength in this group. Um, but the thing is, no matter how strong you are, when you see family members or your own children, um, or people or young kids or relatives of yours pass away, it takes a toll on you. And that's what happens along this trail. Older people are starting to die. Kids are dying, not only from the disease, but starvation and exposure to the elements, rain and cold and things like that. Um, and it's at this point that the women are starting to lose faith. They're starting to break down. They're really hurting. So what happens is the elders pray to the gods, saying, "Give us a sign that to help these women. Give them something. Give them some sign of hope." And the next day, where they were crying, this flower grew. Now the thing is, the flowers appear in the wild where the trail goes. All right. Yeah, it spreads off a little bit, but primarily where the Native Americans went on that map you saw, that's where the Cherokee's rose grow in the wild. Yeah, you can grow them inside your house and things like that, but that's fine. But in the wild, out in the open, a lot of times they don't do too well. You have to really maintain them. But in the South, they do very well. They grow, very, very well. Now, the thing is, the rose has some significance. There's 5 petals, which represents the 5 tribes of the Cherokee. The color is white, which represents the innocence of those Native Americans, the older people, the children who were basically forced off their land. Um, the gold center is unique because the thing is, that's one of the main reasons why the Native Americans were kicked off their land. There was gold discovered on the Cherokee land in Georgia. And there was a lot of white settlers who heard about this. They wanted that gold, and they knew these Cherokees would fight to the end on their land. So get them out. And lastly, the flower has thorns on it. So if you try to remove it, it's going to fight back, just like the men did. So this rose has some significance, and the story, like I say, is truly amazing. Now, here's my question to you: do you think that Jackson should be seen as a tyrant president? I mean, like an over powerful president for not listening to the courts and continuing with the Indian removal? Remember, the court said no. They belong there. We have an agreement with them, and Jackson's like, no, I'm still kicking them out. Do something if you're going to do something. Otherwise, shut up. I'm doing this. Second question is, what's your thought on the Cherokee Rose story? Do you believe it's true? Why or why not? And explain. Okay, so take your time. Go ahead, write that out. But we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right, so here's your exit ticket. There's only 2 questions this time. But the first one is, do you think the election of 1824 was stolen? And why do you think this? Do you think that was really stolen from Jackson? Or do you think that Clay legitimately just said, you know what, let me vote for these people, things like that? Okay, so the next question is, do you think the president should be allowed to appoint anyone that they want for a certain position? Or should that person have some type of way of having qualifications for it? Should they be able to earn it? So if it's like a job for, like, let's say again, like Secretary of Agriculture, should the person be like a farmer or have some knowledge about farming and how crops grow and things like that? And should they have that knowledge, or should it be just anyone the president wants to pick? And tell me, why do you believe this? Okay. So once you're finished, that's it for this class. Hopefully you learned something new. I will see you guys later. All right, so you guys take care and you be safe.